Okay. Um, Wanted to do two-dimensional arrays today. So I started by making this form. Um, and all it is, as you can see right now, is a title, which I need to change the variable name of. And that was just the label. Then we have here, change player, label, uh, goals, label. We have assist here. And then we have PIM label, which is penalty in minutes. So, missing some sports, I figured the best thing we could do is um, do something fun like this. So if you do that, like I just did, and I made an event for it, you want to go to properties, go to events. Oop, I did one there. No, not help. Uh, no, JText field 2. So it's this one. But go to properties, go to events. There's one here. Just clear it and click close. And then when you go back, it'll be gone. So that kind of removes it. Just blanking those out, and then I'm going to put in player field. Here we'll put goals field, assist field, and here we have penalty in minutes field. Now I'm going to have here the add stats button, and here I'm going to have the list button. Now, the reason why we're going to use two-dimensional lists for this is because what's going to happen is, if you think about it, a table that we would use for hockey stats. Let's just look up one of them. By team. I don't want to be on hockey. But when we go to but if you look at this here, you have their name. Like, so each row it corresponds to each person here. And then each column represents a different part of it. Now this is what a two-dimensional array would look like. Our one-dimensional arrays would just be something like this. Would just be there. Like, I know we always drew them across like this, but one-dimensional array would be this part, then this part, then this part. And like each one would be its own thing. Now we want to link multiple pieces of data together. So I'm going to show you an array today. Maybe Wednesday I'll fire in an array list, or tomorrow we'll see what happens. But basically, an array, like a multi-dimensional one, is that you have rows and columns. So for us, what we're going to do is um, my each column is going to be one of these, and then the row will be that one person. So what I did already ahead of time was, in my code, so all the stuff that I don't really need, I set up a multi-dimensional array for the stats. So it goes row, then it goes column. So I basically told it that I'm going to have 10 players, and there's going to be 5 fields. One of them being their name, goals, assists. We're going to calculate the points, which is not hard to do, and then we're going to add the penalty in minutes, just like we would in any regular hockey thing. Now the trouble is, when you set up the string one, the string array, because string is what's called an object, so it's not like what we thought it was all these years, where it's just like a word. It actually is what's called an object. So what happens is any object fills in an array with null, the word null, Null. And so if you try to print this out right now, it'll print 50 nulls, which is not fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a method. I'm just going to put it right after this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call it public static void, because so whenever we use a GUI, it's going to be static because it runs on its own. Public, so then we can use it in other methods, no problem. And void, because it just does stuff and we don't worry about catching that information. So like in some of the code you did last time, when you're doing the worker stuff, you would have like ran the method that calculated the total pay, but then you returned their pay, so you had to make sure you caught something with it, so then you could like put it somewhere. Now what I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it fill array. I'm going to make sure it takes in a string array, and the variable doesn't matter. Remember, when we're in a method, this only exists in these two brackets, so it doesn't correspond to this at all. So I'm just calling it array for the sake of doing that. Now in order to go through a 2D array, what you have to do is you're going to have a double loop. And like this method, I'm just going to put it up top here. This method will fill the values with blanks. So what you want to do is this starts exactly the same thing. Now I'm going to call it row just to help you see it. So we're going to start with the rows. Row starts at 0. Row is going to be less than array.length. And then we're going to go row plus plus. So this would help us just do the one, like, and then it would go row 1, like row 1, column 1, row 1, column 1, row 1, like it would just be row 1, column 1, row 2, column 1, row, and it would just go down that first one. So what we have to do now is actually do another loop inside where we start the columns at 0, and the columns are going to go from array at each row. So you're going to go each row and then go to the length of it. So this is where, sorry, just going to make sure I finish this off. So this here, if I pull up that, so here, this is row 0, column 0. And now in this loop, what will happen is row is 0, column 0. Now column will equal to 1. And we're still in row 0. Column equals 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to the end. Then as soon as this is done and we reach the length of it, it's going to leave this loop and go here and go, okay, now we're at row 1. Go through everything. Row 2, 3, go through everything. So it just keep going until we're done. And all I'm going to do here is set the value to our double quote. So array at row and column is going to be equal to just a blank. Now, this method won't happen right away. What I'm going to do is, and this is something new that we haven't done before, is in this public static void main, so in this main method, right here is where it starts running all the code to make it work, to make your frame show up and all that. So what I'm going to do is, minimize this. So what I'm going to do is right before all that code that keeps trying to show up, I'm just going to do this, fill array and put in stats. So, non-static. Oh, so when you try to do it in here, the only catch is we actually have to call this static, which we usually don't do. That's just because if I had if I'd made like a start button, we wouldn't have to do this. But because I'm trying to do it in here, we're gonna have to call it static. So just that's the one little trick. Call this static, and then it works here. No problem. So as soon as this program runs, it's automatically going to go and do this method and make them all into these blanks. So then when I show things, it's not just going to write the word no. Okay. So that's just the setup for this. Oh, what is going on here? No, I don't want to save that. Now what we have to do is think about the logic of what's happening here. We're expecting when people run this, they're gonna type things in. They're gonna hit the add player button. So when they hit this add player button, we need to work out what happens. So we need to get all that information, like what we did before. So first thing, we need to get all the info. So now because we made trouble here is because we made this into a string array, because you can't have words and numbers in there, we're going to have to make everything into words. So, but the first thing is we can just do string name is equal to name field dot get text. Did I not call it name field? Oh, player field, that's why. Oh, shoot. I forgot to rename this one to output area. Everything else has something. Okay. So I'm going to get that. What I'm going to do now is we need to also get the text of the goals and the assists. Now I'm actually going to keep them as strings because I know I'm going to store them that way. So goals is equal to goal field. Did I call it goals field? Get text. And then string, not a string assist can be equal to assist field dot get text. And then the last thing, called the pim field. So all we've done is just get all the info. Always what we've been doing. We always get the info, then we think about what we need to do to process it. So the only processing we need to do is we need to get the points. Calculate the points. So what we have to do is actually calculate these points. And typically, I wouldn't necessarily do this, but what we're going to do is we're going to change things. So like what we've done before, because we can only add together numbers, what we're going to do is we're going to use this parseInt. So we're going to add the goals, and I'm just going to copy and paste this, and we're going to add the assists. So all we're going to do is calculate the points this way. Now we can't store this because it's actually an integer, so I need to now make this into a string. And the cheating way of doing it is string, and I can't call it points again because I've already used points. So point is going to be equal to my integer, plus a double quote. And that all of a sudden makes it into the string. We just sort of added on this nothing, but it sort of wrapped it around now in double quotes like we want it to. So we've done most of the, that's the only processing we had to do because they're just going to type in goals, assists, penalty in minutes, and their name, and then we had to calculate the points. The last part we need to do is we need to add this person to our list. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to add them at the end. Now, when I did the array list, you saw how easy it was. It said add, and it put them right at the end. And we can add with a two-dimensional array list as well. It's slightly trickier. It's not too much, but today what I'm going to do is that's why I set up this array to there. That's why I set up this array to fill with all these blanks. So now all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to steal this. Why are we going to write out more than we have to? But instead of array, I'm going to change the stats. We're going to go through our row. We're going to go through our column. Don't forget to add those in. And what we're going to do is we're going to check if right at our row, if the first thing, so the first thing in our arrays is 0, if it equals, and we know what it should be equal, we could have wrote no, but because I don't want it to print out that way, what we do is we check that the first column in a row is blank. If it's blank, here's where we're going to go. Okay, fine. If it's blank, when we're going through here, we're actually going to add in everything and then just break out of it. So, no, actually, we didn't even need to. What am I doing here? We didn't need to do this. So we're not going into the columns. We're just, so Alt-Shift-F, fix that up a little bit. So we don't even need to go into the columns because there's no use for it. What we're going to do is, I'm going to steal this here. If that first one's blank, what we're going to do is now we're going to set it equal to the name. We're going to set the next one to goals. We're going to set the next one to assists. We're going to set the next one here to the points that we just calculated. And we're going to set the last one to the penalty in minutes. Right, we made this by 5, right? Yeah, by 5, so that's fine. But the thing is, once we add it once, we don't want it to add anymore. So we actually need to do a break here. And this is so that we only add the person once. Because right now, we have 10 blanks. And if we were to run this once, it would show the same person's name 10 times. So that's our processing for this one, is that we know we need to store it in our array so we can use it later. And the later that we're going to use it is when we list things. So that's why you have to think about, when you're doing these things, what we're starting with, how it should all work together, and then how we're going to output it. So now in the list button, we're actually going to output it. But the first thing we need to do is print a heading. Because, well, You really don't want to just print out random things without someone knowing. So what I'm going to do is, and this is going to set up the template for it. Name. We're going to tab it. We're going to do goals. We're going to tab it. Do assists. We're going to tab it. We're going to do points. We're going to tab it. And we're going to do penalty minutes. And we're going to new line it. We're not going to tab it after that. Because we want to make sure that it goes to the new line. Now we double loop to print it. So I'm going to go back up here. Now we need this one. And that looks weird, so I'll Shift F, cleans it up a bit. This one should be stats. This one should be stats. And then all we're going to do here, when we do this, is when I'm inside of this loop here, I'm going to append just whatever's at that one thing. So stats, at position row, at position column, plus a tab. Oh, yeah, do this thing. Now, when I get to the end of my information in that row, this is where I'm going to have to output a new line. So all I'm going to do here is have my row, my column done. And what I'm going to do is what I showed you guys the last time is first I'm going to blank this out every time. Set text. No. I'm going to blank it out each time, and then I'm going to put the heading, and then I'm going to add in these things here. I guess I should do /n. So let's see what happens when it runs. So first name, 15 to 25, Rob. 4 goals, 25 assists, 10. Greg, he'll have 16 goals, 12 assists, and about 16 penalty minutes. So now I've added 3 people. When I go to list them, the only trouble is because I had 10 things here, it's actually going to show all 10. So I should have made this a lot bigger. But you look here, name, showed all the names. Goals shows all the goals. Assists shows all the assists. Points, seems to be adding them all up well. Penalty minutes showing it. And because I tabbed it nicely, it looks really nice. So what I should have done is made this a bit, so now when I go to fix this, I'm going to make this a bit wider, and I'll probably make at least this a bit wider, maybe a bit longer too, so that I know that, but now at least it shows all these things. Oh, I forgot to add Joe. Joe was on our team. 5 goals, 5 assists, and he wasn't a, so I need to add him, list, and now it looks like he just gets added onto it nicely. So that's how we would make a 2D array, and why we would make one, because it'll nicely input everything into each line. So I'm going to show an array list the next day. I just wanted to make sure that you could work with arrays first, play around with it, make your own based on what you like. I will post this code and the video.